950. Real Texas, Real Talk. KPRC Houston, an iHeart radio station.
Legal expert Quentin Brogdon, whether or not your employer can force you to take a vaccine. I'm guessing the question is no, they can't, but they sure can put a lot of pressure on you, can't they?
That's right. Good afternoon, Jimmy. The answer is it depends, and the longer answer is perhaps, but with exceptions. You first have to look at the type of employment. If it's a nurse or somebody who's coming into contact with COVID people or potentially exposing them, or an assisted living home worker, the odds of being able legally to require it as an employer go up. It's got to be job related. It's got to be consistent with the business necessity or justified by a direct threat. And you have to, as a business, be using something that's no broader and no more intrusive than necessary. And then there are exceptions to that. So nursing home employees, for example, those are the kinds of employees, nurses, doctors, who could be required probably to take a vaccine. Others, if you're in retail, it gets to be a slippery slope and probably not.
Okay. That's interesting. Here's the question, though. Let's say you're not in the medical field, you are in the retail business, or you're in a restaurant in a state that still allows people to go to restaurants, and they want to be able to put up a sign, all of our employees have been vaccinated, because they're trying to attract people back in. They want you to think it's safe. Technically speaking, what, if anything, can that restaurant or retailer do to try to convince you that you need to take this vaccine? Can they potentially say, well, here's the thing, no, I can't force you to take a vaccine, but if you're not going to take the vaccine, you're not going to be working here anymore? Can they do that?
Well, that's where you get into the slippery slope. They need to accommodate the employee's sincerely held religious beliefs under Title VII, that's the Civil Rights Act, in the Civil Rights Act. Or if the employee has a disability or medical condition, they have to accommodate that under the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And then short of that, they have to show a necessity. And if you're saying, I'm going to fire you, and there's no necessity, that's when you get in the argument, is it necessary for somebody waiting tables? Is it a health or business necessity? And we have an unusual threat here. This is a once-in-a-100-year pandemic. Samuel Alito, the justice on the United States Supreme Court, he gave a speech, I guess maybe 2 weeks ago now, saying this was a constitutional stress test for our country. We're giving up freedoms and rights in ways we never have done in over 100 years. And the question is, when you balance that against the health considerations, should we be doing that? And Alito, among others, believe it's gone too far, that people are giving up rights to worship and freedom of association and free speech and other things, all in the name of health, public health. So there's a balancing test, and a lot of these things are now being worked out in real time in courtrooms and in front of judges.
Well, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because this is you talk about the slippery slope. There's a pretty wide definition here as it relates to any business and whether or not they need you to get a vaccine. And I hate to keep going back to the restaurant example, but you're serving the public. You have people coming in from the public. Without the vaccine, that person could probably make a case. Not only could you potentially give it to our customers, you could potentially get it from our customers. With a vaccine, we don't have to worry about either one of those things. But that's going to be one of those arguments where you could probably go to 10 judges and get 5 opinions for and 5 opinions against, depending upon their particular political point of view?
Well, you raise a good point, Jimmy. It's a balancing test, and by necessity, how heavily do you weight the health considerations? Does it justify, shutting down churches? Do the health considerations justify, some of the extraordinary measures we've taken, essentially shutting down some and many businesses? And it's a balancing test, and whoever is conducting that test, whichever judge or jury is balancing those factors, how much weight do you give to the various factors? Employers have a duty under OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, to provide a safe workplace. How far do you take that? Do I need to make my employees all get vaccinated? Do I need to get my employees to disclose their travel plans? Do I have to enforce the CDC, Centers for Disease Control recommendations as an employer? Do I have to get my employees to sign pledges saying they'll keep their celebrations small or wear a mask or limit contact? You get into a lot of privacy invasions, and then the question is, does the health pandemic justify that? It certainly justifies losses of some freedoms, but it's in the eye of the beholder. You're right.
Wow, yeah. There's just there's so many different scenarios that come to mind while I'm listening to you to explain all this, and I can't help but think nobody in my workplace has said, Jimmy Barrett, if you want to keep coming in and doing your show at the studios, you have to get vaccinated when it becomes available. And in my case would probably be, and I'm not saying, by the way, that I wouldn't, and I'm not saying that I don't necessarily want to, but if I were to try to make the argument as to why I shouldn't be forced to get a vaccination, I would probably say, I've been here every day since March, since this whole thing began. You never made me not come into work because you're worried about me spreading COVID. I've been here every doggone day. Why should I be subject to this new edict when I've spent the last 6 months working without a vaccine?
That's right. Well, there's an argument. We've been kind of, the governments and employers and everybody, society, we've been herky-jerky in our response to this. We tightened way up in March and April, and then now we have numbers that are just as high as back then, but many governments and employers are not tightening back up the way they did back then. I think there's COVID fatigue, and there's no doubt it's influencing how we respond to this. We are not responding totally based on science and numbers. We're responding based on, it's kind of a mix of things, and we've just kind of put a finger in the wind, and this seems like what we should be doing now.
Can you really blame us, Quentin, when you consider the fact that regardless of whatever restrictions we do, it only goes away temporarily and comes right back again?
Well, that's why we have COVID fatigue. I think you said it very well, Jimmy. That's people are tired. They don't feel it's making a real difference. This feels like it's out of our control. It feels almost inevitable, at least to some, that you'll get it if you go to a grocery store, even if you're wearing a mask. So the fatigue and sort of letting down the guard has set in, and all I can say is the sooner we have a safe vaccine and we can get back to normal or some degree of normal, I think all of us are going to, our mental health will be, that's in as much jeopardy as our physical health at this stage.
I think our mental health is more jeopardy than just about anything else, even our economic health at this point. Here's what I wonder too, and here's the part that I find sad. The people who will be put upon, the people who will be put in a position of having to make that work or not work type of decision are people who can't afford to go to court and fight it. Most people can't afford to do that. They're barely scraping by. They want to make the living that they have to make. They're trying to feed their family. If their boss comes to them and says, we have a free vaccine, they're going to come and give the vaccines on Friday. If you want to keep working here, you need to get the vaccine. 99 times out of 100, that employee is going to go ahead and do it. They can't afford to hire an attorney. They can't afford to lose their job. They're just going to go. They're going to go along to get along.
I think you're right. I see that in some of my cases involving, construction workers and others who are in dangerous jobs. Many of them essentially knowingly assume these risks because they don't feel they have a choice, and they know something's unsafe. They're climbing, heights and working at heights without safety belts and other things that they've asked for. Maybe they're broken or not available, and they feel like they're in jeopardy of losing their job if they don't go forward, even though the little voice is whispering in the back of their head saying, this is unsafe and you could die. So you're right. It often comes down to economic considerations, and those trump safety issues.
Okay. It's going to be interesting. See how long it takes for that vaccine to be mass distributed. I think we should find out in fairly short order once we get into the springtime months, and it's been pretty well distributed to at least the opening groups. We'll see what kind of compliance rate there is, how many people are getting the vaccine, how many people are saying no to the vaccine. This is going to tell us a lot about what kind of spring and summer we're going to have, don't you think?
That's right. And and I think, you played the clip from President-elect Joe Biden. He is adopting a position of let's try and encourage people to do this instead of forcing them. And so we're going to need a public information campaign. People are going to need to believe it's safe. You can't force people to do things. There will be massive noncompliance if the general perception is the vaccine isn't safe. There's going to have to be a general perception the vaccine is safe. There's more than one, the vaccine, plural. And then people hopefully voluntarily will take it, enough of them, so we get herd immunity and we can move forward and have normal lives.
All right, Quentin, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Good to talk to you, sir. Have a good day.
Take care in Houston, Jimmy. Thank you.